All right, there we are. What's going on, everybody? Hopefully, audio's okay. Let me double check that. We're live. I had all kinds of issues. All right, there we are. There we go. I had all kinds of issues getting this set up in like the last 15 minutes. So, but it looks like everything's up and working. Let me turn the volume down on the music. There we go. What do we got coming in here? Very good. All right. Hey, guys, thanks for stopping by. Sorry I'm all flustered right now. I was having issues with the mic, issues with the camera, but we're good. We're live, and we're going to start editing photos. If you guys are new to the stream, what this is not necessarily me saying this is the right way or the best way to do anything. It's the way that I'm doing it right now, and that might change over time. But the idea is that we go on this learning journey together, and that we, pick up things along the way. And if you guys have some suggestions or you'd like to see things done a little bit differently at any point during the stream, make sure you leave that in the comments below. I'll be checking that periodically throughout the stream. But the cool thing was a lot of these photos tonight were actually sent in by you guys, by the viewers, and we're going to be editing a few of these. And I think each one has its unique take or its unique ability to show us a new skill or a new technique. So that's going to be really fun. So looks like we got a few people hopping in here right now. So let me go ahead and switch this over so you guys can see the photos we have. So a few different scenarios here. This one was actually submitted by a friend of mine who, it's actually a great photo. So these are her kids. I think this is one of her foreign exchange students that she has living with them, and they're all getting ready to go back to school. And clearly they're not happy about it, and she is loving life. She's got her lawn chair, her bottle of wine, and she specifically asked to remove the shadow off her face. So we'll do that. This photo was submitted by a friend of mine, but this looks like it's a photo of a photo. If you look up in the top right, this file could not be found. I might have to re-download that. I'll get that one back. And then these two, you can tell were shot on a higher resolution camera. And let me import this really quick just so I have the right photos. Give me 1 second. This is the beauty of going live. We stumble from time to time. I think it was in here. There it is. I might just have to re-download that. But anyway, and then finally I have this photo that I actually dug up from a long time ago. I was going back through old photos, and this is why I don't get rid of old photos. It gives me an opportunity to look at it a different way. Maybe I've learned some things since I took this photo, and at first glance I thought it was just going to be something that I discarded, and then after looking at it again, it was one that I really enjoyed. So give me 1 second. I want to get that other photo sent over by Christine. I know it's in my Gmail. I can just re-download it really quick. This will just take a second. And then if you guys ever have photos that you'd like to see edited live on stream, make sure that you email those to me, tommyoverboard@gmail.com. Here we go. Let me just download this again. Download. Here we go. And if you ever need to know how to import photos into Lightroom, you're just going to go to Import Photos and Videos. Select your source. I have a card reader, but in this case, I know that it's in my Downloads folder, which is going to be in a different place for everybody. Uncheck all of those, and we're just going to select this one, import it. There we go. Drop that into EP9. There we go. Now we're in. So what I was saying about this photo is you can tell it's a picture of a picture, right? You can see in the top here that it was a photo. In the bottom, it looks like it's sitting on someone's lap or something. There's blue down here. So this is a photo of a photo. Very low resolution, very little detail, but it was special to her, and she wanted to see what I could do to recover it, to enhance the colors, obviously. And she specifically asked, and I've got her permission to go over this on stream, but she asked me to fix her shirt and pull that up a little bit so that the focus is on grandma and her, and we can do that. And that's I asked permission because this is something that obviously some people might feel is weird, but it's something that we do from time to time in Photoshop. Is we adjust clothing and make some things like that So I'm going to show you guys how to do that tonight as well. All right. Making sure that I can hear myself on your phone. My wife's watching the stream apparently outside. That's not in here, right? No, we're good. All right, so the very first one, I think we'll start with the simplest and move to some of the more complicated ones, but I think this one right here is probably the easiest. We're going to start off how I start off all of them, and we're just going to check to see what device this was taken on. So this was shot, let's see, an iPhone 8 Plus. Okay, so this was shot pretty high resolution. This is good. So we can actually do the lens correction. It's going to remove chromatic aberrations, enable lens profile correction. Let's see if we can go Apple iPhone 8 Plus and see if that made any difference. Yeah, a little bit of lens distortion, nothing serious, but it's just good to get in the habit of doing that. And off the bat, I think they nailed the white balance on this. You can always come up here and just hit auto and see what Lightroom thinks, but I think that's too green. I liked it warmer, how it was shot. This looks really good. So we'll make our basic tonal adjustments. I think the exposure is a little dark. Let's bring that up just a touch. And then we'll bring the highlights down, lift the shadows up just to bring some of that detail. And then I'm going to skip the whites and blacks. This is something I've been doing just the last few days, is coming down and using the tone curve to get that contrast. I think you get a more even transition from the darks to the lights. Let's see how that looks. And then before and after, I'm hitting my backslash key. This was original. And after, a little bit of contrast, added some saturation, but I like it. I might bring the greens down just a little bit by coming up into the HSL sliders, going to saturation, dragging that green down just a little bit, just so the grass isn't so overwhelming and so powerful. Now you can see the sun's coming in from the left side here. And feel free, guys, if you have any suggestions, don't let that chat sit there quiet. Please ask questions, say, hey, thanks for stopping by. It's just fun for me. But you can see the sun's coming in from the left here, and you know, she got the glass in the perfect spot that there's a shadow on her face. So we're going to go ahead and fix this first. And there's a few ways to do it. I think that the easiest way to do it would just be to grab the brush tool here and increase the exposure and then just paint, you know, on the areas that are shadow, and that actually might work just fine. There's going to be a little bit of noise in there if we do it that way. By lifting up the exposure, you're going to get some noise. Another way to do it would be to keep the exposure where it is, lift the highlights and lift the shadows. Actually, keep the highlights rather, lift the shadows, and then maybe paint just a little heavier on there. There you go. And you can see what that looks like if we go ahead and turn that off and on. But the way that I think I would do it, it's going to be a little bit more time intensive, but let's go ahead and delete this. And we're going to take this photo into Photoshop, okay? So I'm going to go up here, click Photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop. Is there audio still going? Very, very quiet. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of this layer by hitting Command J or Control J if you're on PC, which I am. I don't know why I said that. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer. And what I'm going to do is just lift that up, make it nice and bright, 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 bright. Maybe not quite that bright. And then I'm going to duplicate that and make this one dark, 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 dark. About there. And I'm going to hit Control I to invert that mask so now that it is black. So basically what we did is the effect that I just showed you, making the one brighter and the one darker. We have put a mask on that. And by filling it in black, you can't see it unless we paint in white. So we're going to go ahead and switch our foreground color to white. Select the paintbrush tool. And we're just going to zoom in here on Laura's face. And you're going to see a theme. We're going to be doing this in some other photos also tonight. So zoomed in on Laura's face, and this first one, let me just double check. Yeah, this is the brighter one. So we're going to call this Dodge, call this one Burn. Dodging and burning. So we're brightening up some areas and darkening others so that we can get an even tone. This isn't a super high res on her face, so we might lose some of that. There's not as much detail to recover, but in the Dodge here, we're going to get this paintbrush And we're going to get a nice soft paintbrush, 0 hardness, and we're going to bring this flow down to about 2. Opacity can stay at 0, that's fine. And now I'm just going to paint the areas that I want to be brighter on her. So I'm just going to paint, paint, paint. We can bring that flow up just to make this a little quicker. And on the flip side, what I could do is come over here and darken some of these hotter spots to even out that skin tone like I was saying. Get in here. I'm using my bracket keys to make my brush a little smaller. Anywhere that there's really harsh shadows right now, I'm just trying to get that out. And then we're going to fix the color correction on our face also. And then after that, we can just apply our standard adjustments. So I'm just still dodging here. I'm making these areas brighter by painting on them. And if I want, because I can lift this up, make it even brighter. There we go. And then we can burn out some of these areas. All right, so let's fix the colors. What I'm going to do is hit Control-Alt-Shift-E, and that's just going to take all the effects so far, put it on a layer up on top. And now we can come in here and let's see, let's come down to our effects here, and let's do a, what's the best way to do this? I would do hue saturation, but I think that might, let's do a selective color, and let's go with our oranges. Well, I guess we'd have to do reds and yellows. So if we lift these up, let's see what this does. I know what we can do. Let's go ahead and delete this. All right. Instead, what I'm going to do is put another layer up on top, and we're going to just select, we're going to get this color right here of her skin, hit OK, and then we're going to take that paintbrush and we're going to paint it over the areas on the right. Now at first, this is going to look a little weird, all right? This is a little advanced stuff, but I want it to look good for you. And then we're going to change the blend mode down here to color. That didn't work. Hang on. Soft light? Usually it's color, but let's go ahead with soft light here, and then we can reduce the opacity of that so it's not so harsh. And then let's look at before, after. Might have gone a little too bright, so I'm going to come back to the dodge here, and I'm just going to reduce the opacity of the entire effect. There we go. So now before, after, before, after. Still not happy with those skin tones. Give me a second here. There we go. That looks a lot better. All right, let's bring this back into photo. Let's bring this back into Lightroom. Go ahead and hit save. And now it'll create a duplicate over here. So this was before and now after. The only issue I'm having is the orange here on her face. So I might actually just desaturate that. So I'm going to come over here and grab a brush tool. Bring the saturation down. I'm going to bring it down a lot to start. Ooh, brush. Saturation. Bring it down a lot so I know what I'm working with. And just paint this area. That's kind of orange. And then bring that saturation back until it's just how I want it to be. There we go. So you can see the difference now where it's very orange. Now it's a little bit more even keel. Go ahead and hit done. I'm here with your Aunt Kim. Are you guys together? It's my mom. I'm going to take a radial filter, just put it right around the face like this, and then we're going to hit invert. So now we're working on the inside of this radial filter. And I'm going to bring a little bit more saturation since we desaturated the whole thing. There we go. That looks a lot better. So let's go ahead and look at the before. This was the original photo. She wanted to get that shadow off her face. You guys are together? That's awesome. Why wasn't I invited? I've been talking about getting the family back together, you know? And then after. So this is pretty good. Let's go ahead and zoom this out. See how we're looking. She looks super happy. They still don't look quite as happy. I think I might have gone a little overboard. I think there needs to be a little shadow on the side of her face if I'm being super nitpicky. Just because it looks a little awkward that everybody has a shadow because of that light source and she doesn't. So we can easily fix that. Just grab a brush tool here. Let's bring the exposure down about 1/3 of a stop and just brush this in on the right side. Let's see how that looks. Turn that off and on and on. Good. Go ahead and hit done. And that looks a lot more natural. All right. Let's go ahead and zoom that out. And then overall, I think the crop looks pretty good. It's a little crooked. So if I was going to do anything to this, I would probably just straighten out that fence line and then the ground line here. So now one way you can do it is just grab your angle tool and just drag a straight line across what you want to be straight. That looks pretty good. Keep the surfboard in there. I think it looks cool. This pole could probably go if I really wanted to do that. I guess we could. We are off to shenanigans. Just wanted to say hi. All right, well, thanks for stopping by. We could get rid of this pole. It might be something I do after, but I think... what is that? Where is the sound coming from? Hang on, sorry. There we go. It was my email, apparently. All right. Last thing I'd probably do here is just put a little vignette around it. And then maybe bring the saturation down just a little bit. I think adding that contrast made it a little too saturated. There we go. So here's our before photo. Well, there's our before, and then after. All right, so that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and put 3 stars on that, and moving on. I think, let's see how we're doing on time. That didn't take too long. This is the next photo that I wanted to do, and I want to put a disclaimer out there. Because this is so low resolution, if it's blurred out and the detail is lost, there's no way to recover that completely. There's some things we can do to fake it and even make it. So we are going to do that to try to bring some detail and add some contour, but we're also going to correct the white balance and all of that stuff as well. But the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and bring this photo over into Photoshop. And we're going to start by making this photo higher resolution. And the way that we're going to do that is come up here. Actually, yeah, let's leave it 16-bit for right now. Come up here to image size. And this is new. If you have the new version of Photoshop, they have a new thing called Preserve Detail 2.0. We used to use like the bicubic smoother or the automatic adjustment. Preserve Detail 2.0 seems to do a pretty good job. And I want to increase this photo. Let's say like 200%. What would that be in pixels? 1080. That's probably as good as we're going to get. And then let's go ahead and hit OK. So now the image is larger. And then the next thing that I want to do is try to reduce some of the noise. So I'm going to come up here into Filter, Noise, Reduce Noise. And then we're not going to bring it up quite that high. Let's preserve quite a bit of this detail. Bring that strength down to maybe 8. I just want to reduce some of it. And we're not going to sharpen the detail because we're going to do that next. But let's go ahead and see how this is looking before and after. And by checking this Remove JPEG artifact, it's going to take some of these square these little square boxes off the face. If we zoom in really far, you can see if I turn this off, preview, it's probably going to show it over here, not on here. There's like little square boxes all over the place. So let's go ahead and hit OK on that. And now we're looking better. It's a lot smoother. The photo is larger, and it didn't get completely distorted and blown out. Next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of sharpening. So what I'm going to do is add an adjustment layer. We're going to change this to a smart object. This way, any adjustments that we make or any filters that we add, we can come back and update those later. So I'm going to come up here into filters. We're going to go to sharpen and smart sharpen. And that's a lot. Let's start everything down here, the basics. So I don't need this. And let's bring the sharpening up about, let's say 200%. And let's start off at a really small radius, like 1 to 2 pixels, just enough that you can see some of that detail coming in. Not necessarily detail, but it's just going to sharpen out those contrast edges. But I want to reduce the noise just a little bit so it doesn't get too noisy and get too speckled, I guess you could say. All right. There we go. That's looking better. Before and after. And if I zoom in here, and granted, this is a low resolution photo, so we're not going to have all the detail that you're going to see in some of the photos coming up, but you can see that with it off, it looks, at least look at the eyes. The eyes are very blurry. And then you turn that on, it just brings out a little of that detail. So that's a good start. So the next thing I think I want to do is go ahead and crop this. So we're going to crop this. Let's crop it 4:5 like we're doing Instagram. That way we get the top of this photo out, and we can always adjust it if we need to. Let's bring this in a little bit. You can even see a reflection off of this side here. Like you can tell it was a photo of a photo because you can see like the reflection, like a light bouncing off that. That's a better crop in my opinion. Let's go ahead and hit enter, see how that looks. Go ahead. There we go. And now we can just fill this area up here in the top by grabbing our lasso tool, draw a little box around that. And we're just going to use the content aware. And actually we're going to do that. Hang on. Control Shift E. And we'll do that on this layer right here. I'm going to get a little bit more exact by using the polygon lasso tool. So I can just do this corner right here. Edit, content aware fill. And then filled in that corner. Very good. All right. This is getting better. I want to blur out this background. I could do it by selecting the subjects here and then creating a second layer and then blurring it out. But the other thing that I can do to make this a lot quicker is I'm going to hit Control J, make a duplicate layer. And this one I'm going to come up and let's make it a smart object. That way, if we blur it too much, we can come back and we can make it a little less blurry or add blur if we want to do that. And we're going to go up to the filters here and hit blur. And we're going to add some Gaussian blur to the whole photo right now. And I'm going to bring this up to about, I'm looking at the background here. I'm not looking at the subjects. That's not going to look like that. I'm looking at the background and how much blur do I want? How much separation do I want in this image? And I think about 9 might be too much. Let's try it. There we go. That looks good. So now, because we made this a smart object, we have a filter on this. And what we can do now, if we want to bring these guys out, is we're going to go ahead and switch our foreground color to black, grab our brush here, and we're going to increase this flow to about, I don't know, 40%. And then we're just going to paint on what we don't want to be blurred, what we want to remove from that effect. So we're just going to paint right here. And the faces, basically the whole, both the grandmother and the Christina. Now we don't want to go over because then you can see it's going to pull some of that background. So you can hit Control Z if you make a mistake. I'm going to zoom in to get a little bit more specific, a little get closer here. And you want to get the hair and things like that. You don't want the hair to be too blurred out. and make sure we don't have any blur on the faces and the hair on the shoulder. There we go. There we go. All right. So now you can see if we remove this blur, there's the background. I can zoom in so you can see the background. And then with it on, it just creates separation. I think it's still affecting her hair a little too much. Let me grab that black brush and get some of these hairs. We don't have a ton of detail, so we don't want to lose any if we can help it. That looks better. There we go. So before and after. So now that's removing some of those distractions, bringing your eye to the subject and that which we're trying to fix. So before we get into any color grading, one of the things that Christine asked me to do here is to pull her shirt up and make it not so revealing. I totally understand that. Don't be embarrassed by that whatsoever. This is things that happen. And when we have the photo that we love, and it's a great picture of the two of you, if you want to remove that, we can remove that. So what we're going to do is hit, there's a few ways we could do it. We could blur it out. I think it might be like if we went back here to the smart filter and just painted in white. On this area, you could, it's still not going to make it blurry enough. Oops, switch it. You could blur it out. That might work. And we might add a little bit of blur, but I think it looks too fake. You can tell that this photo is not going to be blurry, you know, down here, down in the bottom of this photo. It's going to be blurry in the background, but the subject should be in focus, or at least, you know, semi in focus. So we're going to leave that how it is, and now we are going to Control-Shift-E, make a new layer, and we're going to use the liquify tool. So you're going to come up here to Filter, hit Liquify, and now what we're going to do is we're literally going to pull her shirt up. So we're going to zoom in here. I apologize. I'm probably going to get in trouble doing this. And we're going to grab our smudge tool right here, or forward warp tool, and we're going to make it, we don't want it to be too small, because then it will, if we make the adjustment really small, it's going to make these like, I don't know, warp lines. So we want to be pretty good size, at least to start. And we're just going to make small increments, literally pulling the shirt up into that direction. Small adjustments at first. And then we can make finer adjustments. Just a moment. And now down here in the bottom, we're going to lift that up a little bit. And we can even make a bigger adjustment, bring everything up a little bit. Not just the shirt, sorry. That's good. And then we can, really what's distracting, I think, is the white spot here in the middle. So we can actually fill that in. So it looks maybe more like a shadow down there. You can bring this up a little bit further. And you can already see before, after, it's looking better. Depending on who you're asking. But more presentable in her view and her eyes, which is good. And that's, you know, the customer's always right. I'm going to pull that up just a little bit more. And now what we're going to do, let's go ahead and see before and after on that. Before, after, go ahead and hit OK. And now what I'm going to do is come in here and we're going to add a layer on top. And we're going to switch our color to black. Actually, I want to get a little bit of this maroon, because if it was pure black, it would look a little odd. You know, we're going to get a little bit of this maroon color. So let's sample this maroon color here. And then come to black, and we're going to bring that down in almost black with just a little bit of maroon in there. And we're going to change the blend mode to hard light. Get our brush out. And then go ahead and darken this area. Just using the paintbrush. And you could add some textures in there, especially if this was a higher resolution photo. But I think for this case, actually could probably make that a little bit darker, like more black. Let's go ahead and switch our color to completely black. And then add a little bit more black. Maybe make like a little gradient from the top down, something like that. There we go. That looks better. So now you can see this is the original photo before the crop and then after. Let's go ahead and bring that back over into Lightroom now. And this is where we're going to fix the color correction. So here's our original photo over here on the right. Now we have the adjustments that we have made, and now let's get into the actual edit of the colors. So clearly this is a very warm, the skin tones are very yellow. Each person has a little bit different skin tones. You can see Christine's a little more orange, where there's some greens and yellows, and the grandmother here, her skin tone naturally is probably lighter colored. So it's picking up some reflections in the area. So we can go ahead and adjust that. And the first thing we're going to do is come up here and we're going to add just a little bit of blue into this in the white balance. And then we're actually going to bring the tint down so we lose some of that magenta just a little bit. Already we're starting to see a pretty significant difference. You can go ahead and hit my backslash key before and after. Maybe a little bit more blue. Let's say 23. That looks better. All right, and I'm actually going to bring the saturation down just a touch, maybe -8. There we go. And we can use the HSL sliders so we can bring up like specific colors. I think there's some reds in her shirt and blue in the grandmother's shirt that we want to bring out, bring up the greens too. So we can do that once we get through the tones. Now the photo overall is pretty decent exposure. If I increase the exposure too much, you're gonna see their faces get blown out. So I'm gonna bring the exposure up just a little bit, but not too much. Bring the highlights down just a touch. With these low res photos, you can't make as big of adjustments because there's not as much information in the photo. So I'm just gonna bring the highlights down a little bit, bring the shadows up a little bit, and then I'm gonna hold my Alt key, lift this white slider up, and it's gonna be the face. So I'm just gonna bring this up a little bit. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna leave the whites where it is because that's gonna add too much hot spots on the face here, but I am gonna bring the blacks down. Too much. Yeah, about there looks good. So this is already looking a lot better. If I hit my backslash key, we can see before and after. Textures I'm not going to mess with. In fact, I might even bring the textures down a touch just because we do have a lot of noise in there. Clarity, same thing. I can bring that down a touch if I want to. But we can dehaze. I'm going to leave the dehaze where it's at. Vibrance, we can lift up just a little bit and leave the saturation right where it's at. So this is looking a lot better. We're going to go back into Photoshop to adjust the skin tones on both the mother, the grandmother, or the mother and the daughter. Or grandmother and granddaughter. Really quick before we do that, I want to pull some of this green out, so I'm going to come up here to the saturation and bring the greens down, and you can already see that coming off of the grandmother's face. If I turn this off and on, it's slight, but it's there. Same thing with the yellows. Bring the yellows down a touch, bring the oranges down a touch, bring the reds down a touch, and then we can bring the blues up in the shirt. There we go. Colors are looking better. Sharpening we can do. We've already done that in Photoshop. We're not going to do any more of that. The luminance, noise reduction. I don't want to do any more noise reduction because it's already a very low resolution photo. But really quick, we're going to bring this back over into Photoshop. Edit in Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to hit Control J. And now what I want to do is adjust the skin tones on both on both people in this case. So what I want to do is first start with a saturation level. We're going to bring the saturation down in the entire photo. Yeah, about there. And then in here in the mask, we're going to convert it again. I'm going to hit Control I so it's all black. And then we're going to paint in the areas that we want to have that desaturation, which in this case is going to be the skin tones, because we're going to make our own skin tones. And the way I'm going to do that is come in here just like this, grab my brush. Let's put a flow of about 20. And we're going to paint in white on the areas that we want to desaturate, which is going to be the face. That's still in black. There we go. Fixed it. I was wondering why nothing was happening. So we're desaturating the skin, and it's going to look a little weird at first, but then we're going to fix the skin tones. There we go. Same thing with the arm. Desaturate. There we go. So now if I turn this off and on, you can see the skin tones have gotten washed out. They've lost color. So we're actually going to come up on top of this. Let's go ahead and hit Control-Shift-E, make a stamp of everything that we've done so far. And on top of this, we're going to add a layer. And we're going to get a skin tone here, getting the boys on. We're actually going to go into this, get a skin tone here. And the way that I'm going to do that, I have it actually saved somewhere in here. Let's see. Where are my downloads? Downloads. Skin tones. So I actually have this skin tone layer here. I'm going to copy this, bring it over, convert that to 16, and we're going to make this a little bit smaller. So here's just a skin tone palette. You can get this on the internet. Everybody has, Dante has beautiful skin tone. Are you guys all over in Louisiana together? Is that what's happening here? We're taking over and demanding underwater pics. I got one. I have one coming up. Let me just give them some color in their face really quick. So I'm going to select this color. I think this one probably goes best with their skin tones. So I'm going to get my eyedropper tool, go ahead and select there. We can get rid of this. And then on a new layer above everything, I'm just going to take my paintbrush, change this over to color. And we're going to get like a really low opacity here. Bring the flow down. And we're going to paint over the areas that we desaturated before. So we're going to bring some of that color out in the skins. We don't want to go overboard on Grandma's face here because, as we know, she has lighter colored skin. But we can go ahead and add quite a bit to Christine. And you can see the before and after there. I'm actually going to grab the eraser really quick. I didn't mean to go into Grandma's eyes here. We don't need her eyes to get orange also. There we go. All right, so going back into the brush, let's zoom out here just a little bit. And I'm going to paint this anywhere that there's skin. So we're giving her a tan. Grandma, we're not going to go too crazy with because she does have that lighter colored skin. This is looking good. All right, so for a very low resolution photo, we're able to bring back some of that detail, and this is the last step that I would do to fake it in this case. We're going to make 2 adjustment layers up on top of here. Okay, and what we'll do is convert both of them to overlays, and then I'm going to fill this with gray, okay, which is just a neutral color. Go 50% gray. Use my paint bucket tool to fill in both of these layers, and you're not going to see anything happen just yet. You shouldn't. And we're going to call this one shadows. Kind of the same thing as the dodging and burning that we did before. We'll call this one highlights. You should take the special request to Patreon account. Yeah. In the future, you never know. So now that we have this neutral overlay, and we have one that's shadows, one that's highlights, and it is a blend mode of overlay. Anything that we paint in black is going to act as a shadow, and anything that we paint in white is going to make it brighter. So if we want to add a little bit of depth to a really low resolution photo, we can do that with shadows, with shading. And imagine that the light was coming, in this case it looks like the light was hitting them dead on. But if we wanted to make our own light, I would say coming in from top right. So what we're going to do is put the shadows on the left side of areas that would have shadows. Let's bring this out. Grab our paintbrush. Actually, let me zoom in one more. There we go. Grab our paintbrush. And painting in black now with a really low flow here. Maybe 10%. That might be too much even. But on the side of the nose here, yeah, that's going to be a little too much. Let's go 2%. So on the side of the nose, underneath the smile lines, on this whole side of Christine's face, if the shadow's coming in, if the light's coming in from the right, the left side, or the left side of the right side of her face, left side of the screen is going to be darker. Even under this eyebrow a little bit, maybe a little bit here. Frame the face up a little bit. And you can see now we're adding depth into the face. We don't want to go too crazy, but just enough. And same thing with Grandma here. A little bit on the side of the nose, maybe underneath the chin, underneath the jawline, underneath the nose. So I'm just adding some shadows. There would be some shadows here because Christine's face is out in front of her. We're just adding a little bit of depth. Bring out those eyes a little bit. And now you can see before, after. Powell, everybody's over there right now, huh? I heard you guys did really good today. Got a big score. Congratulations. Who else? Did anybody else get a tuna today or only Dante? So you can see shadows. Conversely, we can go ahead and switch the brush over to white, and up in the highlight section, get that same brush out. In areas now that we want to enhance, we want to brighten them up. We have that light coming in from top right of our photo. The tops of the cheeks, we can brighten those up a little bit. Maybe a little bit on the forehead, not too crazy on the forehead. Right down the bridge of the nose, we can brighten up the teeth. A little bit on the chin. And now you can see the difference in those highlights. Same thing with Grandma. Let's go ahead and give her a little highlight action. Brighten up the cheekbones, bridge of the nose, and then a little bit on the chin. All right. Now before and after. Before, after. I think that's pretty good. Go ahead and save that. Bring it back over into Lightroom. And now you can see the original photo. Very, very, very low resolution. And then after. It's pretty dramatic. Also, you can see, fix the shirt. So Christine, thank you for trusting me with that and also being brave enough to let me make some of those edits live. I appreciate that. So how are we doing on time? We got 15 minutes. I definitely want to edit one of these photos here. These were sent to be my mark on Facebook. And then I want to please the majority of my viewers, go ahead and do this underwater one also. So I don't know about the cabin. I'm not sure. I guess from a Photoshop aspect, I can like remove the light and stuff like that. But I think the dog is probably going to be our best bet at getting a cool, interesting looking photo. I think first things first, let's go ahead because this was shot on a, let's see, what was it? Canon EOS Rebel T7i. Shot with an 18 to 55 milliliter lens, 55 millimeters, so you have good compression, ISO 100, so we have great detail, and f5.6. And you could kind of tell the background is a little blurry, but it's not completely blown out. Exposure's pretty good, ISO 100, so we have really great detail. But it looks to me, and this could be a little picky, maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like the eyes are just a little out of focus. And that could just be the reflection off them that's causing that. But what I'm going to do is first go ahead and crop this down. Let's go to do an Instagram 4x5 crop. We're going to go portrait style here. Bring this in just a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Go ahead and enter. And what I want to do is separate the dog here from the background because the background is very bright. And in order to create depth, create separation, I want to make that background a little blurrier and even darker. So we're going to bring this over into Photoshop. I don't know why I just don't edit everything in Photoshop. There's definitely advantages to Lightroom. Let's go ahead and hit Control J. First thing I want to do is separate the background. So we're going to have to select the subject. And in order to do that, I'm going to select my magic wand tool, click select subject. Can you make the dog look like it's underwater and remove fur, add scales? How many White Claws have you guys had tonight? So I made the initial selection. You can see it missed some of the top of the dog's head here. So we can go ahead and just use our quick selection tool, hit the plus icon, and add some of that fur in that it missed. Everything else looks pretty good. There's some fur coming out here to the side. We're going to be able to fix that in just a second. Get more to the ear. Get rid of this. All right, so now if I hit select and mask, and let's go ahead and add like some crazy color here, like green. Right now you can see if we were to make this selection, it's going to be really jagged, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to be clipped off. The fur on the outside, we don't see that. So we're going to use the Refine Edge tool right here. And we can go pretty big with this, and we're just going to paint along the edge. And you're going to see some of that fur come back into play here. Oh, didn't mean to get that nose. Let me go ahead and remove that. Oh. There we go. We can go back to the Refine Edge now. And now you can see the edge looks softer. You can see that there's actual fur. Did this again. Bring that up along the side here, the ear. And anything that we don't want, we're just grabbing this brush tool right here and just removing that with the minus key. All right. That's better. The ear matches the background a little too much, I think. So I'm just going to do this around the entire outside. Some areas are going to be better than others. Is that really going to happen right now? What's that? The White Claw? I don't know what you're talking about. All right, some of that fur is coming in. And there we go. So that's a much better selection. You can see now when we go ahead and remove this, we can hit OK. I'm going to copy and paste this guy onto his own layer, and now we can just reduce the brightness of the background. And it's not going to affect the dog. Well, I don't know why he moved over to the side. Let me realign him. There we go. And then the background, come back up here into these adjustments, brightness, and we're just going to make this darker. Yeah, it looks good. Before and after. It looks like we got a little something going on right here. Let me just get the eraser tool. Soften that up a little bit. There we go. All right, so now we're creating depth. You can see before and after. I think I might make that even a little bit, just a tinge darker than that. There we go. And now for the eyes, I'm going to go ahead up here to the top, hit Control-Shift-E, make a new layer. And for the eyes, I want to really make those stand out. And I think I want the focus to come to the eyes and maybe the nose. But I'm going to hit Control-J, make a duplicate layer. And what we're going to do is actually blur out the entire image. I'm going to convert this to a smart object, and then we're going to blur it. If you can make that dog look like it's underwater, I'll subscribe to Patreon account immediately. Done. I could actually just drag him over into the shark photo if you want me to do that. So where were we? Getting confused here. All right, so we're going to come over to blur, Gaussian blur. Let's bring this up to about there. And now with a black brush, we're just going to go ahead and paint in the areas that we want to be in focus, which are going to be the eyes, the nose. Paint in black here. Janko style. What? Oh. You're talking about his shark surfer photos? Paint in black. And now look at the eye come out. I think the blur might be a little too much. Let's go ahead and bring this down a bit. Just a little. We don't want the whole thing to be blown out. There we go. We can go ahead and maybe with a little softer brush, bring that flow down. Get the nose in there, sharpen that up. We're not really sharpening, we're just removing the blur. But now you can see if we go ahead and turn this off. Now instead of the entire dog being in focus, we're bringing drawing the eye in towards the face, into the eyes, which now look a little bit better. And we can do the same thing with the sharpening. So we can just add it to this layer. I'm going to go into filter, sharpen, smart sharpen, and we're going to increase that just a little bit. Maybe a radius of 2. I don't want to reduce the noise. And now we can see before and after. All right, so this is looking better. I think the last thing that I would do in Photoshop to this photo is make the eye stand out a little bit more. And I think the easiest way to do that would just come in here, make a new layer, grab your brush and paint in white. And just the areas that you can see the reflection, we can bring this flow up a little bit. Go ahead and paint over that in white. Just like that. Same thing over here. And now we want to blend this. So we're just going to come up to blending options. Under my underlying layer, this is the blend if, hit Alt and break this apart. And now you can see if we drag this over, it'll blend that in there nicely. So now we can see before, after, and if we zoom out, you can see it just makes those eyes stand out. We can decrease the opacity a little bit. I think that might be too much. That looks pretty good. All right, let's go ahead and bring that back into Photoshop. Oh, hang on. I don't have a Patreon right now, but I can, have you subscribed, Paulo? I can definitely put him underwater. We'll do that after stream. I can definitely put the dog underwater. Let's bring this back into Lightroom and put a bow on it. All right. You could do some tonal adjustments to it. I honestly think it was done pretty well. The photo was taken pretty well. Maybe bring the exposure just a bit, bring the contrast, the highlights down just a bit. I don't know that I'd lift the shadows up too much. We can bring the vibrance up. What I would like to do is add a little orange to the highlights. So I don't really use split toning a whole lot, but we're going to go down into the split toning. And in the highlights, let's go ahead and add just a little bit of orange. So that German Shepherds have that, you know, at least your stereotypical German has that really orange head, and it's a little too much. So this is before and then after. Still a little too much. Just a touch. That looks good. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the first photo. This is out of camera and then after. Put a little vignette on it. Call it a day. A vignette. Actually, this photo, because we have that dark background, you could really bring it in tight. Feather this up. Maybe not too much. 30. How's that look? Before. After. I like it. Great photo. Thanks for sending that to me. Mark, is it Mark? I forgot who sent it to me. How are we doing? We have enough time for underwater? 5 minutes? All right. I think that I'll probably need more than 5 minutes, but the whole reason I wanted to do this photo is because it was just one that I found going through old photos. And this is why I don't delete all the photos that I thought were bad. And not that this is, you know, going to be the best photo I have, but right now I'm like completely out of content for Instagram. So I need a photo, go back through my old photos, and we can see what we can make out of this. And from a crop standpoint, how do I want to do this? I think, you know, since we're going to be doing this on Instagram, let's go ahead and do 4x5. I'm going to hit my X key to go into a portrait crop, and I'm going to bring this down. I don't want to zoom in too much because we're going to lose some resolution, but also because it's on Instagram, we can get away with it. I think it would be cool if we had the shadow and the ground in there. Maybe something like there. Let's rotate it just a little. I want to make sure that the shadow is like directly underneath the shark in the photo. That's too much. That looks pretty good. Yeah, this is a good starting point. We'll go ahead and start here. And first and foremost, white balance. I still don't have your technique just down with the eyedropper tool, but I'm going to crank up the yellows here, crank up the magentas, maybe not quite that much. Play around with it until I get it close. I'm going to actually do the shark probably separately, so this is looking pretty good starting point. I have been using my eyedropper tool and hovering over this and trying to get my red and green numbers to be really close if I'm trying to get blue. In this case, the green number is a little bit higher, so one way to offset that would be to add a little bit more magenta. Now when I hover that eyedropper tool, you can see red and green are much closer together. They're almost both 28. So I think this is a good starting point, at least for white balance. Coming down here, let's go ahead and bring some details, do the basic tonal adjustments. Actually, might leave those shadows down there, bring the whites up. Bring the blacks down. Obviously, when you add contrast, you're going to get saturation, so I'm going to come down and bring that saturation down. That's looking better. Now, this is the bottom of the shark, so you can see that there's a shadow, right? It's not really standing out. It's not popping. We want to make that jump. So we will get that in just a second. But the good old-fashioned dehazer, I'm going to lift that up. Not too crazy with it. That might bring the saturation down just a little too. There we go. So this is before and after. Let's go ahead and bring this photo over into Photoshop, because I want to make that shark stand out a little bit more, and I want to get rid of a lot of this stuff in the background. So let's hit Command-Control-J, make a new layer. Let's start by just getting rid of some of these little guys. I'm going to grab my marquee tool, hold Shift, and I'm just going to circle all these little things that I don't want in my photo. Is that a shark? Yeah, there's a whole shark over here. We'll get rid of him. This little fish over here. Maybe some of these little plants. Everything that's a distraction. Yeah, it's good to leave some of it in there. Otherwise, it'll look fake. That looks pretty good. Anything up top? And we're just going to go and use the content aware fill. Let Photoshop do its job, hit OK. And now, before, after. Clean that up. There is a little hot spot right here, so I'm going to use my healing brush. I'm just going to hit Alt, grab a sample right here, paint right over that. Maybe clone stamp it, get a little bit more precise. Where's my clone stamp? Here we go. Here we go. Better. All right. So really for me, the only other thing that I like to do is brighten up the belly and then maybe add some contrast down here on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is add 2 curves adjustment layers. I could also do this in Lightroom, probably be easier in Lightroom, but I'm kind of on this dodge and burn kick right now. So curves 1, what I'm going to do is grab the midtones on this curve and bring it up about there. I'm going to hit Control I to invert the mask. So right now you don't see that effect at all. Curves 2, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to bring this down to about there. Same thing, Control I. It just fills in this mask with black. Remember, black conceals, white reveals. So if we want any of those effects to appear on this photo, we have to paint over that mask in white. So we're going to grab our paintbrush tool here. We're going to switch our foreground color to white. And I'm going to bring this flow down again to like 5%. Get a nice soft round brush. And now on curves 1, which was our brighter section, if I paint, it's going to make the brighter. Are we in white? Yeah, let's bring that flow up a little bit more. There we go. Now when we paint, you can see that brighten up. Any of those areas that we paint now is going to add that curves effect that we saw before. And you can see before and after. That might be a little too much, but we can always just adjust the opacity. You could also go back in with black and paint over it, and that's going to, again, conceal. So that brings it down just a little bit. That looks better. Let's go ahead and switch back over to white. Down here in the sand, I might just brighten up some of the bright areas and then darken the dark areas, add some contrast, add some depth, maybe right down the middle. Bring that up just a little bit. And now in the other panel, in the curves 2, this is the one that gets darker. If we paint in white now, these were our highlights. I actually might add a little bit more to that shark. Whoops. Coloring outside the lines. I think it's because I'm watching it happen. If I like look away for a second, bring it back. Yeah, we'll roll with it. All right, so now we're going to burn. It's dodging and burning. Burning is going to make things darker now. So if we go ahead and use that white brush, anything that we paint is going to make that darker curve now appear. This was, so down here like the shadow, if I want to make that darker, I can paint that in. If I want to make the sides here a little bit darker, I can do that. Maybe add a little depth by making it darker back here. The further we get away, it gets darker. And then even like in between these little lines in the sand, adding some darkness on that one side is going to make it look a little bit more contrast, a little bit more depth separation. So now if we turn that off and on, you can see what I'm talking about. All right, let's go ahead and bring that back over and do Lightroom. Go ahead and hit save. Well, we get to the sharks now and everyone goes quiet. You got the popcorn out. All right, so I think I want to bring some of the blue out of the shark just a little bit. And then same thing out of the sand. I want to make the sand a little bit more white. Not too white, and then it looks overly fake. But I'm going to go ahead and grab a graduated filter, drag that up like this. And we're just going to bring the saturation down a little bit, very little. Go ahead and hit done. And then also to get some of these aquas out of here, down in the HSL sliders, grab my aqua, bring that down just a little bit. And now you can see before. Whoa, where are we? Very subtle. Where's my, here we go. Yeah, that looks good. One thing also, if you're editing for a photo that you're going to put on Instagram, you think about like what the background of Instagram is. If we look on Instagram, your photo is going to be up against white, has a white background. So sometimes I get in the habit of having this dark gray background, but once you put a white background on it, now you can see, oh, well, maybe this photo looks a lot darker than I thought it was. So it's a good idea to throw it on white, and then, that might prompt you to bring the exposure up, based on where you're going to be putting this. So I think had I not put that background to white, I wouldn't have brought the exposure quite that high. In fact, I have a tendency to underexpose photos to begin with. So now I can see when I pull this up in Instagram, it's going to stand out a little bit more. It's going to be brighter. It's going to pop. All right. So now the last thing I wanted to do was desaturate the shark a little bit. I'm going to grab my brush tool. I'm going to soften this up just a little bit. And then we're going to zoom in 1:1. And just so I can see where I'm drawing or where I'm painting, I'm going to bring the exposure. Well, how do I want to do it? I guess I can just use the mask overlay. Click that. And now I can go ahead and paint in the shark. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're keeping it pretty soft, so it's going to be a subtle effect. Get a little bit of those fins in there. Get his little buddy in here too. Make you not so blue. And now we can go ahead and bring that saturation down just, again, just a little bit. If you make him completely grayed out, it just looks funky. Let me zoom out a little bit. So this is before and then a little too much, right? I'm going to bring it down to about -35, and then I'm just going to zoom in really quick and make sure that I'm not missing any spots. Another way you can tell, I don't think the red works that great all the time, so you can just bring the exposure way down. And now you can see that there's some areas that are kind of uneven. Right in here. There we go. Then you can just make that exposure how it was before. Done. Zoom her out. Come on. There we go. So now you can see the before photo. Before. After. How we do on time? We went a little over. You could maybe put a vignette on it. I don't know. Sometimes with these underwater photos, because it's bright on top and bright on the bottom, when you add that effect, you get like this bow tie effect in the middle, and I don't like it. Like if I put a vignette on this, it looks okay. I might just keep it light, 10, something like that. Good enough for the gram. I might make the water a little bit darker. Come up to the HSL sliders. Luminance. Make the blues touch darker. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? All right. Well, hey, guys, thanks for stopping by tonight. We did a few different photos. Laura, I'll go ahead and send this to you. The very first one that we did, if you missed the beginning, Laura here wanted the shadow off of her face, so we went ahead and where's the beginning? There's before and after. Then Christina sent us this one. This was a photo of a photo, you can tell, with her grandma, and then she wanted, obviously, the colors fixed, sharpened, and then her shirt adjusted. We're able to do that. And then the dog. Before, background's really hot. Probably shot this in the middle of the day. And then after. And then the shark. Before. After. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. This will be available for recording if you want to go back and see what we did before. If you missed that, probably here in about an hour on YouTube. And if you did like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And I'll see you guys next Thursday. Hey, that was a pretty good